Welcome to the Chronobreak podcast. I'm Snnuy,
And I'm Vlad the Lad.
and we've been gone for a couple of weeks, and that was due to some personal circumstances, the new patch, a new expansion coming out that I was covering on Twitch, so we were all kind of just short on time, but we're back together, and we're here today to talk about our experiences with the expansion, some of our favorite decks that we've played, what we like, what we dislike, and to start off, we're going to talk about exactly that, just some of the new cards, our favorites, and then we both brought a deck list that we're going to show to you guys. So Vlad, let's just jump right in. What have you been enjoying about this expansion? Did you like any of the new cards, any of their approaches?
Ooh, where to start there? That's a lot, because there's a lot of positive things to say about this in the
Let's
first
start
place.
with that. Yeah,
I gotta say that beforehand. Me as a Noxus main, there were so many Noxus cards, and I have only like tipped the peak of it. There's so many to try out. There's any, and there's this Apothecary that we'll talk about later, which happens to be close to be my favorite card of this expansion. There's so much diversity. There's so much cool new flavor to older archetypes, and also they made it so old regions or the identity that they have, they broke it up a little, and there's so many different things. Maybe you go ahead and say what you liked about it.
It's actually the same for me. I really love that they kind of highlighted two regions, which is Bilgewater with Alawi and Noxus with Annie, and they gave them so many tools. Noxus more so than Bilgewater, I guess, because Bilgewater was more of this like closed archetype with Spawn. But Noxus really doubled down on their like conditional removal type of playstyle, and with Annie, just a fantastic one drop for an aggressive region. It was about time. Burn champion for a burn deck, I guess. But what I love the most about this expansion, by far, is the variety cards, or the support for older archetypes, I guess. I love this so much, in fact, that this has become my favorite expansion since Rising Tides, and maybe I like it even more than Rising Tides, because you get these champions. We got 4 champions. Let's say, I don't know the exact numbers, but let's say that 40 of the cards were for those champions and their packages. And then more than 20 cards were variety reveals. And one single card can just change an entire archetype. And we've seen that with the, what's the name? The Harbinger of Thralls, I think, the 2/2 bird. It doesn't really change the way Thralls play, granted, but it gave the deck so much consistently. It bricks so much less often. It's a world of difference, and we can really see that everybody who has played that deck in the past is now obviously playing it again. New people are playing it. They're showing better results with it. So same with Megatusk and the Undergrowth. I forgot the name.
Yeah, I think Undergrowth it's called, yeah.
Undergrowth.
Tossing and draining too.
Exactly. Deep has kind of been a meme for years. Even when we got to see Scarab, it saw some play, but it wasn't great. And now suddenly it's a tier 1 deck. It's shown incredible results. And giving some love to an older archetype, making it play slightly different and make it a little more consistent is such a beautiful thing. And I have not seen any other card games do that. I have never seen, not once, have I seen Hearthstone give support to an older keyword or older archetype. I mean, they've tried to like invent new cards, but not in the way that Runeterra does it. And I really, really appreciate that.
It's such a bummer that they don't do that, right, in Hearthstone, because I think this is such an easy way to like revive old archetypes and give this a whole new painting like to the whole game and to the whole playstyle. It's actually crazy. So I don't know why they wouldn't do this in Hearthstone.
Yeah, it's not like they never do it, I guess, but Hearthstone has rotations, which is like 2 years, and then they give it like in set 1 of a year, and then they do it at the final set of the second year. They give it like 1 card or something. It's like, okay, well, I've waited for this 1.5 years, and now I get to play with it 3 months, and then the archetype is gone, rotated. And yeah, that feels really bad.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you how is your feeling about the cosmetics, like the Pulse Fire event as a whole, because they kind of merged this together. I think normally they had, when they had events, it wasn't like with the new card release, like you can correct me on that one, but I think they had it like separately, and now they have a whole bunch of new cards, and then they have it combined with the Pulse Fire event and the cosmetics.
Yeah, I think they've done it a few times where they release both cosmetics and a patch, but I actually dislike that. I would prefer to see them release a patch, and then in the next patch, 2 weeks later, or like a big balance update, I would prefer if they released skins there. But it makes sense for a game like Runeterra because the cards don't cost any money. I mean, if you play 3 months, you have a full collection. So it makes sense that while the hype is high, everybody's excited that they then release the skin, so people start buying it. I think it makes sense from like a business perspective. But for me personally, I like just having new cards to hype it up, and then hype a little bit more when there's a new event and some new skins. But I can see why it does it.
Okay, and the flavor wise, like the whole pulse fire thing, is that something that you like, or would you say it's not my cup of tea?
It's not really my cup of tea, but I do think the skins look really nice. What do you think?
Hmm.
Is that your cup of tea?
Uh, yeah, it looks like sort of like Protoss from StarCraft or from Warhammer 40k. There are the Tau, the Tau. I don't know if I pronounced it right. It has a flavor from that to it, like the futuristic and the blue laser and stuff.
Mhm.
I kind of like that, but I don't think it really fits to the champions and to the game as a whole. Like it's a little too wild to me.
Yeah, they gave to all the characters with guns plus trash or something. So I don't know. I like the World Breaker skins a lot more because they're more like monster champions, more like big dudes like Trundle and Scion. It's a little more my thing, but
Yeah, it's more also the mystic taste to the whole game, right?
yeah.
And it has medieval parts of it. It has a whole fantasy, right? And Worldbreaker makes a little more sense than futuristic pew pew, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. It fits the aesthetics a lot more, but ever since we got KDA added to Runeterra, I guess I just don't really care about that anymore.
They messed it up entirely there.
Yeah.
And it still feels a little bad when I play Go Hard, which is still a pretty viable card, that I always have to hear that sound and do this little dance. It's super stupid in front of the camera. But yeah, I guess we still have that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Feel the Rush, Go Hard have just been such popular card. It feels normal if you play Runeterra a lot. We've been seeing this for more than like a year, 1.5 years, I think. So I guess we got used to it. But if you're new to the game, you're like, oh my god, this game is all about lore. Like the lore of Legends of League of Legends, I mean. And then you see somebody play Go Hard against you, and I'm like, what is this sound? Why are there sunglasses? Why, after Pack Your Bags, do I see Evelyn dancing? She's not even in the game. What's happening? So yeah, it's kind of. I think that was a big miss, but yeah.
Yeah, I think they improved on that. So
Yeah.
it's okay.
Sure.
And going ahead with the positive things, I want to point out yet again that they're still holding on their monthly schedule. Monthly schedule that they promised for, I think, over a year, and now for, I think, 3 months they're now actually doing it, with either shaking up the meta with a big balance patch or with new cards, and this feels super nice. I saw so many people coming back to the game because of the patch. This release event, we have to talk about that as well, for a little here. There were so many people like watching the stream, and Twitch was exploding because of that.
Yeah. The stream was honestly one of the single best streams I have ever seen to announce or hype an expansion. It was incredible.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Like the only thing that I had, they didn't do anything about it on YouTube. I think they didn't really upload it yet. I haven't checked it again, but when I was looking for it, it wasn't there. So I think they could also at least upload the thing later down the line. That you can also, because not everybody is going for Twitch, right? There are so many people that are only YouTube and they never go to Twitch. So
yeah, that's true. That is a bit of a miss. Yeah, there was a lot of interaction on Twitch, like people were voting and stuff. So maybe they didn't have time to edit it or didn't feel like editing it. But I don't know. The community event and the voting, it was incredible. It was so well done.
definitely.
I think that was one of the coolest things that Runeterra has done so far.
Mm-hmm. And what I also liked about the patch, I think this was also the first time that they proactively nerfed something in advance where they knew something would maybe be toxic, and then you have that for 2 weeks or 4 weeks, and one deck is really toxic. Like we had the classic example, Caesarea, where it was toxic for so long time, and people were really upset with it, and so many quitted the game because of it. And now they did this proactively, nerfing Crochet Corsair and the Demolitionist in order to not get this Jin Annie deck, which is obviously sort of self-building, and it's really strong already still. But with those nerfs, it's a little bit more in the line, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. It's also, I think, a problem, and this is not anyone's fault really, but burn or aggressive decks are just always really, really good in the first week of an expansion because you don't really have to overthink throwing spells at your enemy's nexus to kill them as fast as possible. Whereas if Illaoi turned out to be the most broken deck or most broken champion in the game, there's a little more decision making with the tentacle and keeping it healthy and when you need to attack and when you need to spawn. So the win rate, even if Illaoi was really broken, could still be low just because he's complicated to play. But any Jhin is really straightforward. So I'm glad that they proactively nerfed that just in case it turned out to be too broken. I don't even think the deck is too strong. It's powerful. It's fast. So a lot of people are going to be playing it. But I like the concept, kind of.
Yeah, definitely.
What's your opinion on the Annie Jhin pre-built kind of deck?
Yeah, I think like most people, I never really liked those pre-built concepts. We had that with Lurk for a very long time. And I think it's still in a way pre-built, but now you have the rally card as well. I think there need to be added more Lurk cards that you can actually exchange cards in the deck and have multiple versions of it. And yeah, with any Jhin, it's sort of similar. I mean, like you said, you only throw those units in that deal Nexus damage right away, and then you're good to go. And yeah, burn isn't a thing for me, for you neither. So I'm not really interested in it. I never play tested it, to be honest. I just played against it over and over. But yeah, that's that. I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if you put 39 lurk cards in a lurk deck, you still have that flexibility of that one card. So how pre-built is it really? It's not 40 cards pre-built. So I don't know. Kind of flawed logic there, Mr. Vlad.
Get out of here.
Sometimes I play right. Sometimes I play Ruthless Predator. There's your flexibility. No, but seriously, I can appreciate a well-built aggro deck. I, for example, actually played a one-drop attacking aggro deck today a little bit that people were unhappy with. They said they didn't recognize me anymore, so I switched after a few games. But it was basically like Misfortune Annie. It had the Buru Leader, the Island Navigator, so you can get the Scout attack. It had the Lurk Rally card. It had the Drake Hound, the 2-mana 4/1, because you're attacking so much with Scouts and with the free attacks. It was a really cool concept, but it was just crazy aggressive. So I like looking at it because it can look like a really clean deck list, even if it's aggro. But that doesn't mean I enjoy playing it myself. But I will say that I really, and this is kind of a hot take, I guess. I don't think many people agree with it. I actually like playing against aggro. But that's probably because I enjoy playing Targon. Or yeah, and it's the same for you probably with like the Freljord Noxus deck that you've kind of just been known for too. It's a really interesting play pattern that you don't really get against any other deck, but against aggro, it's really you are the one that needs to manage the resources that you have the most effectively. Your lifesteal units and your like if you're playing Targon Demacia, your lifesteal unit like the Sunforger, you only get that for one turn. So optimizing your single combats and your concerted really, really matters. And it was the same with the Fangs before it got nerfed and it was in decks. I really enjoyed playing Victor Zoe or Victor Aphelios against Spider aggro, and the whole game plan just became around protecting your Fangs and getting as much lifesteal as possible. And it was really interesting to me.
Yeah, definitely. Like it's the same for me as a control player. And I mean, when I play mid range where I can't heal, I'm not so happy to see aggro. But I play a lot of where drain or heal at least a little bit to survive, because you always have to keep in mind as a deck builder there is aggro running around, and you have to build against it a little bit at least. And I never mind really when I run into it, and when I lose to it, it sometimes feels a little boring. But it's not like that I'm not enjoying the game because of it or anything. Like there are people who are offended way more, I guess.
Yeah, I definitely hate losing against a Field Rush deck with Trundle and Tryndamere much more than losing against aggro. Because against aggro, at least you're done in 5 turns. Against control, like that kind of deck, you just get your stuff removed turn after turn until they play their 12 mana spell. It's just not my thing. I can see the appeal, but I don't like it.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
you, for example, play Swain, Sejuani, for example. I've seen you play the deck a bunch. I really like that is more of a, my units matter. Like the stuff I put on the board actually has to make an impact. And your Levy, your Swain, it all comes down to that combo to close out a game as a control-y deck. So I appreciate those type of decks a lot more than just straight up, like let's say 35 removal cards, 3 Field Rush, 3 Trundle, and 3 Tryndamere, whatever.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's also about self-harming and everything. And like you say, if you don't have any units on board, you're done for.
Yeah.
And I also have Aram in the deck, so you can, if that gets removed, you also have a problem. But this is like the second win condition.
Yeah, right.
To get back on track here for a second, I wanted to say that I really adore the hand count that I finally added.
Oh, yeah.
to mention as something positive, and to like slowly go into the negative things. Do you think there is anything that they could have done better from the patch, from the release sort that they did, like the way they released the things?
I think they could have nerfed more stuff. This might just be me, and this doesn't have to be true, but Quicksand has been a very frustrating card. I like Quicksand being in the game right now because Bard Z is a really strong deck, and I just don't like it when elusives are good. So it would have been wrong timing, but I would have liked to see some proactive nerfs to decks that were already strong, because I would not be surprised to see in a week or 2 weeks from now to see Faded, San Viego, Scouts all be the best decks in the game. People are experimenting with new cards, but I'm fully expecting those decks to be the top dogs again. And no nerf to Faded, no nerfs to Ezreal, I think is a really big miss, especially Ezreal, because even if Ezreal is balanced, I think it's just wrong to have that kind of uninteractive shooting the Nexus playstyle. It feels really bad to play against.
Yeah, we on the last podcast we kind of missed out on this cast play merge thing that they did, and I still go with the sentence that I did there some weeks ago. They have to revert this, in my opinion. Like I don't know why they did that. What was the higher intention? Maybe you know that better. But especially for Ezreal, it's like super weird. Today I saw a video from Aikado on Twitter where the enemy had like 16 HP, and with 13 mana he just sniped him down to 0.
Yeah.
With no interactability, 16 burst damage. It's like, what?
Yeah, I saw that too.
This game is about interactability. Like, why would you do that?
Exactly. Yeah, no, I heavily disagree with just the thing that is possible. Landmarks that people have complained about are one thing that they kind of break the whole. This game is about interaction because landmarks are just hard to interact with. But Ezreal being able to do that 16 damage by just putting stuff on the stack, completely ridiculous. Absolutely should not be in the game, and I really hope it gets fixed. It's the same. I don't mind this as much for Faded, where if you now cast a single combat, that they get the +1/+1 before the strike, as soon as you put the spell on the stack. I think that's fine. But I think it makes the deck too strong. So I would like to see the deck nerfed to keep that aspect of the deck intact. Maybe the Runeterra devs think that the Ezreal functioning like that is fine too. Maybe, but then make him like really hard to level, like increase it to 10 or something. I don't know. Just don't make him a problem in the long run. I'm sorry. Like I think I'm. Oh, go ahead.
No, it sort of felt like they didn't playtest before they made this change, and this is why I disagree with this change. So, like Ezreal, for example, I don't think they intended that to happen, and this, was making no sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, there's always like a lot of thought and playtesting that goes into that, but it feels that way because the things that were not adjusted or touched are now just ruling the meta. Like I think making that change and then not nerfing Faded when they know it was a huge change to an already strong deck and it's going to make it even stronger. I think that's weird. If you make a change like that to such a big part of the game, then also nerf the decks that it's going to affect the most. I like the change. I'll be honest. I wasn't sure about it. I like that's in the game because it makes it easier to have a feel good moment for the person casting an expensive spell or something. I play a lot of Udyr, and Udyr is fine. He's not the strongest. He's definitely not the weakest anymore. But the fact that I can now put a stance on the stack to level Udyr, I think just feels nice. It gets it out of range of like some removal. And I like that is possible, and I don't think it breaks the game, and it makes me feel a little better, and my opponent knows that they have to play around that if I have a stance in hand.
Yeah, I guess you kind of have to get used to it. It was just for me, also as a control player, that I liked that interactability. That, for example, like not for you, is maybe a bad example because he wasn't so prevalent and so good in the game. But I liked when you could do exactly that and not make him level up, and you have this interactability, put it on the stack, and then you resolve the stack afterwards. And if he's still alive after the stack, then that's totally fine, then he can level. But yeah, this is for different cards. Like Lux, for example, is the same thing. You would just level her right away, and you pay those 6 mana. You definitely get the beam. There's no way around it. You can't play around this as a control player now, and this is also something I was not my best change. Well, not the best change to me.
Yeah, no, I understand. It does definitely remove some interaction, and I don't like that either because this is the game about interaction. But there are still a lot of spells, etc., that are still in the game that can be played around, and specifically for like champion levels up and keywords like faded. Yeah, it's a little harder to play around, but again, I think it's better for the health of the game to like streamline what play and cast is and making it one thing instead. So there's not like outliers, like really weird cases that will just confuse you. I like streamlining the game, and I like nerfing champions where that is a problem. So I think Lux needs a nerf, for example, maybe a 3-4 or something, because it was just a huge buff. Same with Ezreal. Ezreal should just be changed because it's one thing if an Udyr levels, but it's another thing if an Ezreal can kill you from hand and you have nothing to say about it. That is really where I draw the line. And I don't think that's hypocritical to say, because there is a difference between getting your Nexus shot and leveling a champion that gets +4/+4 in stats from that change.
Yeah, but that's exactly my point. Like, they didn't change anything, and they just made this change merge thingy.
Yeah.
And they didn't do anything about Lux or Ezreal or any other. They're now a little more toxic champions, and yeah, that's my issue.
Yeah.
But enough of that. I think we have ranted enough about that. Do you feel that anything is overpowered? Like, all the archetypes got buffed. Some people say that Deep is overbuffed to an extent. Would you agree with that, with some archetypes from this patch, or?
No, I actually think everything is fairly balanced. I think if I had to complain about something, it's going to be what I just said, that in 1 or 2 weeks, the old meta decks might be at the top again, because their cards are just still very powerful. And another thing is, as much as I love him, I think Bard creates some pretty frustrating high roll scenarios. I saw a screenshot by Pep Scola where he was playing against aggro. They had the attack token on 1, they played Crackshot Corsair. Peps landed a chime on a Zoe, played it as a 2/2. Opponent surrendered. Yeah, I mean, and it's probably correct because they couldn't win anymore after that chime. It's really ridiculous that on a turn 1, if you get the right chime, you can win the game. I had actually the same thing happening. I think I was playing Bard Freljord with Udyr against a Bard Zed, and I played a bird on turn 1, and on turn 2 I top deck another bird, and it landed 3 chimes to make a 5/4 on turn 2.
Mm-hmm.
A 5/4 on turn 2. I mean, I was happy because I was playing. Yeah, I actually played out, and it turned out to be, it was Ionia, so they still managed. But yeah, it was interesting. It literally carried me through the entire game.
There you have it. Just play Ionia, and you're good to go.
Yeah, apparently. Yeah, right. Ionia just deals with anything. But yeah, the fact that Bard can buff up elusives, and that is now a good deck, and the fact that sometimes you just get those ridiculous early high roll scenarios, I don't love that because it's completely out of your hand. But yeah, I think overall Bard is probably just fine. Probably balanced champion. What about you?
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's only some days after the expansion, so you can't really tell if something is like really broken or not. People are still experimenting, and the older archetypes that got buffed, like Frozen Thralls, I don't think they are like overbuffed. Same goes for Deep. Like, I haven't faced Deep so much, so I can't really talk about that. But as a whole, I wouldn't say there's anything that is like super toxic where they would need a hotfix or anything like that. So this would also be more on the pro side that's executed that well. Maybe that's also because of randomness and sort of unintended, but yeah, they did it well.
Yeah, I agree. Honestly, I'm super happy seeing older archetype like Thralls and Deep just be back at the top. It feels so nice, and let's be honest, all they're doing is competing with the new cards. It's beautiful to see.
Yeah, it's sort of like competing with the power creep that they had with a lot of cards.
Exactly.
New released cards.
Yeah, Deep came out 2 years ago. Straight up 2 years. The time really flies, but seeing them release 2 new cards for Deep literally 2 years later is honestly it's all I could ask for. Even if I'm not much of a Deep player, I play a deck from time to time, like I don't know, once every 2 months or something. But playing against it, it's an awesome concept, and it's not. I don't think it's ever really been toxic. So I'm just happy to see it.
Yeah. On my con side, I have also that the new champion release, I wasn't agreeing 100% with that because they combine it with Path of Champions, and I think you also complained about that a little at least. But maybe that's something we have to get used to. But in the end, I didn't like it. They should isolate this, show the champion, and then maybe do a Path of Champions new stuff release like separately as a video, because it would be more condensed as one video for people who care about Path of Champions and like the new powers and stuff. Like a lot of people, when I saw reactions on YouTube, were like, nah, yeah, Path of Champions, yeah, we don't care about that, skip.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a little weird.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know what their thought process was there. I feel like what they're trying to do is hype Path of Champions even more, and the best way to do that is to mix it in with new champion releases, I guess. But it makes it just really strange for PvP players to look at it. Like in the Ilaoi release, I saw like an elusive tentacle, and I was like, "What? Please, I hope this isn't actually a thing." And then I had to rewind a little bit, and to be like, "Oh, it's a power from Path of Champions." Okay, thank God, I guess. Don't know why I had to see that, but yeah. So I don't know.
Good.
Yeah.
And concerning Jin, I was a little complaining about but maybe it's only my take. I think the complexity is going a little too far at some points, especially when there was the Aphelios release, and they said it's intended that the complexity of this champion is high, and there is one champion that is low for progressed players who are better at the game, and I get the idea, but I have the feeling that if we add too many of those champions where you can't really grasp what is happening, then people will get scared, like especially newer players that look at the champion roster and they look at, hey, Jin looks really cool, I'm gonna try him, and then they see those 10 million skills and stuff that he does and how he works and with this virtuoso origin, and they were like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, especially for a champion like Jin, who is just straight up one of the most popular champions ever. And then new players that want to play him are like, okay, what is literally like 90% of this? I don't understand. I get that he's a 4-mana 4/4, but what is an origin? What is a fast, slow, or skill ability? How do I deck build with him? Yeah, I could definitely see it. That's a really good point. I haven't even thought about that, but that honestly, every single champion that was released in this expansion was pretty complex. Even Annie.
Yeah, to an extent, like to figure out at least.
Yeah.
Maybe not so much in the aggro game plan, but like the deck that I built with more of a control shell, it's really hard to find the right home for her.
Yeah, no, I also mean just looking at the card from like a base level, because if you look at Annie's text, it's like if my blocker is dead or gone, deal it to the Nexus, and then there's like the level up with where it's like 3 icons, and you're not sure if you need to do them individually or all of them. I mean, I guess the wording is pretty clear, and I'll be honest, once you play with it in game once, it's like, okay, that makes sense. It was the same with Ari release. Like when Ari got released, I was like, how the hell does this work? What does any of this even mean? But then you play with her once or twice, or you play against her once or twice, like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, especially the moment where you're 5 out of 6 and then you attack with Annie and then she levels, but she still has 2 damage and not the 3+ stun, which is a trap most of the time.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of people thinking that they would stun and then their Annie died.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's but yeah, again, like you do that once, or you look at it once, or you're like, okay, now I know that for the rest of the time I play. But I'm just saying, like, there was no simple champion, really. Before that, we had Gnar, Udyr, Galio, and somebody for Yuumi? No, Yuumi was before that. No, it was Yuumi. Yeah, it was Yuumi. So I think Udyr was pretty simple, pretty straightforward with the stances, even though there are a lot of cards. His text read really simply, and Galio was just, if you know the keyword, you understand the champions. The other two were a little more complex with the attaching and what the implications of that are, and Gnar with the leveling up and leveling down, but there were at least 2 champions that were like just really easy to pick up and play with. And I don't feel like we had a single one of that in this expansion. Not even Ilaoi, because the spawn, pretty weird, honestly, and the positioning on the board is also really awkward, and I've already messed it up like 20 times. So
I wanted actually to copy those tentacles because I thought when you spawn, like boost up all your tentacles, but in fact you don't. You only boost your strongest, and I don't think the word thing from spawn says that.
Yeah.
So you have to go into in-game and try to test it out. So almost every third or fourth deck that I'm building, I have to play with AI beforehand and check if something works or not.
Yeah.
Um,
Same.
be- because I wanted to do this with a lot of PNZ and then copying my tentacles, have a whole board of tentacles, and then I just spawn 3 and all get +3/+3, but it's not working.
No, no, it's really it's about going really big with one tentacle. Definitely not multiple tentacles, and I think that's kind of a miss, like a flavor miss. But the deck itself plays pretty well. It's a pretty clean deck, I think, once you get used to it.
Yeah, it's really strong as well. Like especially her signature card, the Smash, is probably the strongest amongst the tentacle cards.
Yeah, yeah. I had a match today on stream. I played against a Demacia Buildswater deck with Ilaoi. They played 3 tentacle smashes, and I somehow stabilized, and then they played their second Ilaoi champion spell, 4 tentacle smashes, and at that point I lost. Yep.
Yeah, because it's for 4 mana, spawn 3 is already pretty good. And
Yeah.
then you slap something, and if your tentacle's already pretty big, don't take it out of context, you just kill everything.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's a powerful deck. It's a really cool concept too. It's not something I've seen Buildswater do, so I'm pretty happy to see it existing. But there are a lot of implications, and yeah, it can be really strong.
Definitely. Maybe one last thing, because we're pretty much in it.
Mhm.
What do you think about the Tellstones? I felt they were a little unbalanced between each other. Like if you compare the whole set from the Tellstones, because every region got one, which was 3 sisters beforehand, and now every region has a 3 sisters. And I thought some of them were much weaker than others.
Yeah, I agree. First of all, you can look at the Tellstones itself and the spells that they have in them to know how strong the Tellstone really is. For example, the one from Ionia just has 3 honestly really good spells in it, so you can already put that at like a higher power level than something like the one from Targon. I think another really important thing to look at is the ability for a region to pay 1 extra mana to get a spell like that. For example, I think
Yeah,
that
fair point.
yeah. So for example, I think that the one for Shurima is actually pretty above average. It's stronger than, well, I think it's a little slightly above the curve, maybe like the 5th or 6th best or something. But actually, then I think it's stronger than the one from Piltover. I'll say that. I think the one from Shurima is easily better than the one from Piltover. But Piltover is just a lot better at utilizing a tool like that they sometimes need. So suddenly that Tellstone becomes more easy to main deck than the one from Shurima, because Shurima just plays slightly different. And it's the same for the one for the Demacia. I think the one for Noxus is better than the one for Demacia. But Demacia right now just has much better ways to utilize the Tellstone because of a card like Lux. It's the same with the one for Ionia, where Ionia already synergizes with the double spells. So that one, even if the spells were even worse, even though they're not because they're pretty good, the Tellstone automatically is better because it synergizes within the region. So it's also really important to look at how easy it is for that region to use a flex slot like that, and paying the 1 extra mana, which I think Shurima just isn't really good at, even though on average it's a pretty good Tellstone. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the Shadow Isles Tailstone is the one that made me really think, because I think there are 3 cards that almost nobody is main decking, and they are all pretty weak and pretty conditional. When I was thinking about this, maybe it's because they're already pretty strong concerning their spells, like their Vengeance, and they have like the best removal in the entire game, really, Shadow Isles. But I felt like it's too weak. Like 2 spells, like the removal spells, are pretty similar also. So maybe put in a Vengeance or put in a Grasp of the Undying, something to drain, or I don't know. But it felt way, way weaker than other Tailstones.
Yeah. I think it would be a really big risk, though, to put in a card like Grasp that has seen a lot of play in the past. But paying 6 mana to drain 3, yeah, pretty fair. I don't think I would hate to see that. So I hope they kind of experiment with that, honestly. Even I really wouldn't mind, and I can see that Riot would be, or the Runeterra devs would be against this, but I wouldn't mind seeing them like swap one spell for another if the card just ends up not performing well. I would love to see that because it would change the card entirely. Probably not something that will ever happen though.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. I think they could do that. Like it's a card pool, right? Every region now has this three sister thing, and it's slightly easy to do. And you balance a card like that only in that way, right? You can make it 2 mana or make it 0 mana, right?
Yeah.
They have to be 1 mana, and then you can only like differ with the card pool. And I think for Shadow Isles they should do this because I haven't seen anybody playing this yet. Even the other Tellstones, to be honest, people are not experimenting a whole lot with it, as far as I saw in the decks.
Yeah, I would expect the Shadow Owl Tellstone to see play when there is a problematic landmark, I guess, so they have
Mhm.
access to Crumble, because main decking that feels even worse. And then you just have like the Spirit Journey to sometimes be good, and Mark of the Owls. I don't know. But I'm sure they'll find a use for it, one in every 50 games or something, but then you would play it for Crumble.
Whoever plays Mark of the Isles.
Yeah.
Well, it was brokenly better, I think.
It was +3/+3, right? Wasn't it?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was stronger back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good that they added it to the game, but there were definitely some misses, especially the one from Battle City and Targon, in my opinion, were absolutely unplayable.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. All right. Do you have any closing words to the patch? If not, we can jump into our decks.
No, I'm ready to jump into the decks. I think it's just been a fantastic expansion so far, and I hope they move forward with this type of release pattern schedule.
Yeah, really, really happy. Like me as an Noxus player, I would give it an 8.5 or even a 9 out of 10. Really.
I would too, and I'm not even a Noxus player, so there you go.
I mean, how good is the expansion if your favorite card is a Noxus card, right?
Yeah, no, if this was like a Targon expansion, then yeah, I would probably have the same reaction. But the stuff they added to Nox is just spectacular. It's incredible. It really made my love for Nox just skyrocket. And I've always been pretty neutral on the region. I used to hate it, and I became neutral as there were more releases. And now with this expansion, it's easily become one of my favorites. Easily. Yep.
All right, then let's start with your deck.
All right, sure. Then I'm going to switch over to the other screen right here. All right, so there's like an empty space for us here, but I'm going to neatly edit the deck list over there so you guys can see it. So what what we're doing is we are both bringing a deck that we have just really been enjoying since the expansion launched. And I'm going to talk about my deck first, which is actually inspired by Vlad. It is an Apothecary deck, and your version was very, very control heavy. It basically ran like 6 champions and 5 minions or something, plus 4 glory to spawn minions, and it had the Grey Apothecary to kind of go infinite on value. The list I made is a little more board centric. I decided to include Viego with a Camovorn Soldier to make it even more board centric and to have a win con, kind of. Plus the Legion Deserter. Because the Legion Deserter, every time you summon a mist, it gets +2/+2. And it grows really fast. I've had games against Thralls where they played like a little slow. They didn't pop like 4 Thralls on turn 5. And when they were a little too slow, the Legion Deserter would just be able to block every single Thrall. And then the Apothecary is really like where it really just shines. Because every time a 5-attack power ally dies, you get another one in your hand. And because that is also 5 or more power, when that dies, you get another one. So you literally go infinite. And it is such a beautiful card. It's like a mini ARAM. I have been enjoying it a lot. And then the rest of the deck is just control tools, because the first thought with the Apothecary is to combine it with Shurima for a reputation deck, and to include the Treasure Seeker, because you get a 5/2 ephemeral that will die and give you value. But Shurima Noxus is pretty much unplayable if there is any kind of aggressive deck, and with Jin and Annie, that's exactly what that is. So when I saw you upload a Shadow Owls Noxus Apothecary deck, I just fell in love. I loved combining those two regions so much with that card, because we're playing cards like Undergrowth, Val Feast, Flock with some stuns. So you have great game against aggro. You're okay against mid-range because of cards like Viego that just have like their win con. And you're good against control because of the infinite value from the Apothecary. So everything just comes together beautifully, and it's just turned into my favorite deck because of that.
Great, great. The classic question is obviously if you thought about some tweaks here and there to make it different, because I think it's like you say, it's very board heavy. So
Hmm.
there's I think it's my first impression lacking a little of how's it called?
Control tools
Um,
or interaction with like combat spells.
yeah, like interaction in general. Utility is the word I was looking for.
Ah, okay. I felt like the utility was actually fairly good because, of course, like the Trifarian Glory Seeker, where you can trade something, and then if you have the Apothecary, you get a spell back. Also, summoning Mist Blockers, I guess, counts as utility because you get like a really solid defending turn. But as far as tweaks go, I would definitely remove the Trashing Snapper as the first card if I had to change something. And I would either put in like 3 Vengeances, depending on the meta, and I would also consider cutting the Thorn of the Rose for something like a Hydravine, because that's just really good with Viego. Those I really like the Undergrowth for healing. I like the Val Feast to kill something, get a minion. Flock is good because of Spellslinger. Spellslinger I really slept on. This card is really good in this deck. Just delaying is just fantastic with this deck, and setting up stronger attacks with stuns is really good too. But yeah, Threshing Snapper and the Thorn of the Rose for more control, more utility. I could definitely see that.
Okay, so what else is interesting to me is the mulligan. Like, what would you do if you play this deck, and what would you mulligan for?
It really depends on what kind of deck you're playing against. If you're playing against aggro, you definitely just keep stuff like Val Feast. You keep your early units like Hapless, Spellslinger, even maybe a Trifarian Glory Seeker because you can trade into Annie for free. I would definitely mulligan away the Grey Apothecary, but against any other deck, I would keep it because it's like against mid range, against control. It is just your win con because you literally go infinite. So again, it really matters what type of deck you're playing against. But aggro is keep the control tools. Mid range is keep your LeBlanc, your Apothecary, your Glory Seeker. You could even consider keeping Viego or Camivore and Mist, but that really depends on how fast or slow the deck is that you're playing against. Legion Deserter, I never keep. Thorn of the Rose, I pretty much never keep. I don't. Maybe against dragons or something, I would keep it, but that deck is just not played at all. So I think that sums it up.
Yeah, you said the Grey Apothecary against control. I was actually, when I was playing with my deck, you already said I only have very few followers, and when I faced Caitlyn Ezreal, I had a hard time because they were removing both of my Grey Apothecaries that I drew.
Yeah,
With Scorched Earth, and then was done for.
yeah.
So yeah, I think your deck is better in that sense, that or at least against this deck, that yeah, you have other options. Like if your Grey Apothecaries get removed, you still have your Viego that can grow big, it can level, and then be a win condition on himself.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting because the only way for Caitlyn Ezreal to deal with tall threats is a really big Tri-Beam, but that's not easy to do. And the other one is Scorched Earth. So if they're using that on your Grey Apothecary, you will just completely go off with Viego and Legion Deserter.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, I think that sums up my deck. I have a video of it on YouTube, so if anyone's interested, you can find it there too. But for now, let's move
Check it
on
out.
to your deck, which I believe, if I have seen it correctly, also has a Legion Deserter. So I'm already excited.
Yeah, it's weird that our favorite deck so far has Legion Deserter in it, so probably it's a good card. Um, when I was seeing him first, I was actually also looking at all these cards that buff everywhere, and the obvious thing that was in when he was showcased was with Rumble, because he grants all everywhere Rumbles the impact, spell shield, and quick attack. And Legion Deserter has Overwhelm already flat on himself, so you have a 5-drop with 4 keywords already, and you can buff him even further. So I went with a deck where I have Kahiri in, because Kahiri will, if you see him in the prediction, get +2/+2 for all your Kahiris, and then also for all your Legion Deserters. So this was the main idea of the deck when I started it, and I even could fit in Rumble as well. And then I had the problem of I want to discard 3 cards with Rumble. So then the second thing was what champion can provide me with some discard tokens, and that was like with Raven, but he got nerfed to 2 HP, and I was like, maybe not. And I was ending up with Riven, and the set with the Blade Squire and Rune Reaver giving us those tokens. And then we can, on curve, play Rumble with enough discard father, and then even curving out on turn 5 directly with the Legion Deserter. And if we are lucky, what happens more often than not is where you already see your Kahiri in another prediction. Because we have a lot of predicting tools like full ancient preparations and full set aspiring chronomancer. Then he will already be a 7/6 with Overwhelm and potentially all the keywords. So this is a thing where you have a 7/6 with 4 keywords on turn 5. Other than that, it's sort of a mid-range deck. It's also with the Rune Reckoner. Then you can play him, potentially play it on Rumble to level him, and also potentially on your imbalanced Legion Deserter, which is really thick and has Spell Shield as well. You can play it on them and start another free attack. And other than that, there's also Siphoning Strike, which will yet again grant everywhere all the champions +2/+2. You had this in your very beloved ARAM deck, where all your champions will have +2/+2 then. Here it's only for the Legion Deserter, but then also for the Rumble and the Riven. So you have a total of 9 copies in your deck that gets +2/+2 granted. And it's even better as you have those Spell Shield on Rumble and Legion Deserter, which will then execute the Siphoning Strike with more success, I guess. And yeah, and last but not least, you have some tools that will deny any aggression, like Quicksand, a 2-of, and 2-of Scrying Sense, where you take less damage and you refill with Whispered Words a full set. Yeah, and to round it up, we have the 2 Tellstones that I really liked here as a one-off, Shuriman and Noxian Tellstones, because they have a lot of utility, and I think we discussed it before, and they're one of the better ones, card pool-wise. They're more diverse in what they do. And especially in a deck where you predict a lot, you can pull them out from your deck easily.
That's really interesting, actually. I like that you made that point, because I'm not a huge fan of the Shuriman Tellstones, because I don't feel like they really work for the type of deck that Shurima plays. But here it fits really nicely with the predicting, like you said, and also the fact that you can give your Rumble something like Ruthless Predator, the Spirit Fire against aggro, which this deck, I guess, can kind of struggle with. How do you deal with something like Bard Z or the Annie Jin decks? Would you say that that comes in clutch? Or?
I do have the Whirling Death to, remove a very wide board. We have thick units like Rumble and like the Legion Deserter to also have success with the Whirling Death and remove something really big. Also, Quicksand is one of those things that can cope with elusive and stuff, but it's not the majority of it. So aggro is still somewhat of a weakness to this deck, or it's strong against this deck, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, happens with a lot of decks that don't have healing or straight removal. So what I'm hearing is that your favorite part about this deck is really the synergy with Kahiri and Legion Deserter. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, Kahiri was a meme ever since, and he still is. Like, to be honest, there will be games where you don't see him in all of your, I don't know how many I have, 12 predictions or something in the deck. You won't see him once because, I mean, you have around 30 cards. When you predict most of the time, then it's a 30% chance. And if you don't have, not 30, it's 10% chance to see one Kahiri. And if you have one in your hand, it's even lower. So after all, he's still a meme, but then again, you have your Rumble and your Siphoning Strike to make up for that and still grow your Legion Deserters.
Okay, yeah. No, it looks really good, honestly. I'm actually a huge fan of the Careful Preparation buff, because it feels so good to be able to shuffle that jerk back into your deck if he shows up too early. I have really, really enjoyed that. I love that card in Kahiri decks. I love it even more with Zillion, because if you find one Time Bomb, you can pretty much level Zillion. You get one Time Bomb in your hand, play it, it will draw the other one, instant Zillion level, super fun. But I really like the way this deck comes together. It looks really nice. I'm a huge Rumble fan when he's not played in Burn. I like playing him for aggro, and that's exactly what you're doing. So it looks really, really nice. And I guess, oh, go ahead.
I was thinking about, because you talked about Zillion, adding him because of the prediction, but I ended up with Riven one for the Discard Father, and also she will give us those blade thingies where you can give Overwhelm to a really big Kahiri, for example, or a Rumble that needs the Overwhelm. And also, I think there were a lot of decks played with Riven and the Rune Reckoner together, which is a good combination in itself. So I guess she makes way more sense than a Zillion.
Yeah, I guess you can choose to either go in on Riven and getting the blade, like restoring it, or just discarding it at Rumble. That actually, it's pretty flexible, and you'll have to pick the right moment for it, I suppose.
I mean, in the gameplay video that I had, she was eaten up by the discard all the time, and she was only discard father, poor Riven. But
oh well,
I guess Rumble is the star of the deck, really.
Exactly.
With the Legion Deserter.
Rumble is a cooler champion, so we take those. And Leslie, what would you mulligan for in this meta specifically? We've seen aggro, we've seen mid range, we haven't seen that much control. So I'm curious, what would you do against elusive, Annie Jin, and what would you do against some of the Alawi decks, for example, or Bard decks?
I mean, bar decks, it's very important to have that quicksand. You potentially can go with a whirling death if your unit is big enough already, but with the chimes you struggle a lot. But generally speaking, you want to mulligan for your early game. Like with most decks, we have the proactive plays, Blade Squire, Aspiring Chronomancer, Runeweaver, Riven, and Rumble. Those are the things that you should keep in hand. And the Kahiri is 100% a mulligan. It doesn't really matter what you're facing because you want him in a deck, you want to predict him. And booster +2/+2. And other than that, yeah, like I said, Quicksand is the thing to go for, and Scrying Sands to cope with aggro somewhat. They reduce the attack of some units, and then you survive a little more. And that's how you mulligan in a pinch.
Okay. Sounds good. Do you have any closing words?
To my deck or to the whole thing?
About deck building, about your deck, about my deck, anything really.
Like generally speaking, like I said, this is, or we said beforehand, this is our favorite decks, and the fact that I struggled with finding one favorite deck because there were so many that are awesome to play, just speaks for the expansion itself. And like we said, it was so well executed, and I'm looking forward to what's to come.
Same here. If this is like what they're setting us up for with the patches, with the way they're doing champion releases now, I am very, very excited. And I really think that this year is looking up for Runeterra compared to last year. By like, it's not even close. It's so much better. I am really, really enjoying Runeterra. We both of us have stuck through the bad times, I guess. And let's be honest, we've had some really bad patches, but this year they're really looking to make those mistakes or setting them right, I guess, and not repeating past mistakes. What I'm trying to say. So I'm in it for the long run. I always have been, but right now it's just the most enjoyable it has ever been for me.
Yeah, same here. Like you said, I think I have the same opinion now that this is period the best patch they had so far.
All right, awesome. And with that was, oh god, what episode are we on? That was episode 9. All right, yeah. That was episode 9. From now on, we are changing the schedule a little bit, I guess, because what we used to do was record a podcast before patch notes, but because we're doing 2 weeks, and because I think this also fits a podcast a little bit more, we're reacting to changes and what it's meant for the game. But again, that could change. Maybe we'll go back to patch reviews, but at least every 2 weeks, maybe sometimes we're off by a week, we're going to upload these episodes. And I hope you guys enjoy it. We really look forward to seeing some comments and maybe some notes on what you'd like to see in the next episodes. I think last time we didn't have the email. We have a special email. We didn't have it in the description. I think I forgot, so I'm sorry about that. But we'll add it this time. If anyone has a deck that they want us to discuss, please send us a mail, leave a comment, anything at all. Reach out on Discord. And maybe we'll talk about your deck here on the podcast, because after all, this podcast is all about deck building in Runeterra and the sweet cards. It's not really about the meta, even though, we play against meta decks, so we have to talk about it sometimes, but it's really about our love for deck building and sweet cards that nobody else wants to play. So there's that. Let us know.
Yeah, we'd be more than happy to review your decks, so send them in the comments. Let us know what you think about the patch and about the whole podcast, everything that we talked about. Let us discuss a little, and other than that, we see you guys on the next episode.
Stay legendary.
Stay legendary.